All right, let's talk about the U.S. Dollar as a reserve currency, or otherwise known as the petrodollar, and the evolution as well as how it relates to deficit spending in the U.S. Deficit means that what the U.S. owes to other countries. But due to the reserve status and the export of the U.S. dollar to around the world, where the U.S. dollar had 80% at one point, where trade, especially in the energy sector, such as fossil fuels, which has bled into buying of commodities, buying of goods, and the trade, which is done with the dollar for all of that. Now, I'm not an expert. I don't have a degree. I haven't gotten any degree or whatchamacallit for to qualify. However, my own research, my own looking into it, and what I've learned has allowed me to pick up some critical and essential information and understanding of what it all means. So, as I said, the U.S. dollar as a world reserve currency had 80% or more at one point. It has dropped within the last five or more years to 59%. And as I keep track of this, I'm expecting that 59% to drop again, and will continue to drop. Now, why do I say this? Well, for one thing, the two largest holders of U.S. Treasury bonds, which is what the sale of U.S. dollars is, because countries need the U.S. dollar in order to trade for energy commodities, such as fossil fuels, natural gas, and so on and so forth, which is also, as I said, bled into commodities like iron ore, uranium, lithium, and as well as stuff that you buy on your shelves in your grocery stores and department stores, electronics, and so on and so forth. Basically everything. Countries who need those dollars. Well, China and Japan were the two largest holders of U.S. Treasury bond debt, which is what the deficit spending, which is part of the deficit spending that the U.S. Can do to keep, to not only to keep things, to keep prices down, but to also to be able to extract and exploit, as well as do the spending that the military keeps doing. Which, by the way, you should know, it's now over 890 billion dollars, which is high, which is even more than the previous, which was 852 billion. So that's almost 900 billion dollars. And that I expect that to go up due to the fact that they're pushing for war against China, which is the largest economy in the world, based on purchasing power parity, which means what the people can buy with the value of their currency, and so the U.S. bases on GDP, along with the West, which is, and if you look into that, you understand that GDP is basically smoke and mirrors. It has to do a lot with basically lying and misleading and so on and so forth. I'm not going to get further into that because it's rather complicated. But back to China and Japan. So China and Japan have been basically dumping or shorting their dollar, what they hold in dollars, in U.S. Treasury bonds. Japan, as I understand it, did that, bought a lot of that on purpose, because it helped out the wealthy and the political machines who benefited off of buying those U.S. Treasury bonds, which is the same for China, but that has within more than 5 years now, it has become a liability for them to do so, especially with the war drive of the U.S. and the West, and the examples of the U.S. and West basically stealing the reserve that's held in the West of other countries like Russia, like Afghanistan, like Venezuela. Now, understand that gold is part of the economic reserve, economic and financial reserves of a country, and so the West preventing access to the gold reserves under the country, like countries like Venezuela, it ties in with the holding the reserve of the currencies. As I said, they need these reserves, and they hold some of these reserves, actually probably more than 50% of their reserves, in Western countries, so that they can use them to purchase and have trade. China has been buying gold at a reckless, almost reckless pace. Why? Because of what the what the U.S. and West has been doing, and obviously the foremost is this drive to go to war with China, a war which has already started with sanctions, tariffs, and all that other stuff, and as well as their proxy terrorism that the U.S. and West do to prop up these extremists that go around killing Chinese engineers, bombing Chinese embassies, such as in Yugoslavia, the attempted assassination of the Chinese diplomat in in Pakistan from what they call Balochistan, which is part of Pakistan, but that's the name and label they put on. So the Balochistan rebels. Um, and if you understand about ISIS and Al Qaeda and everything else, you know that the U.S. Funds, arms, and does the political and media stuff to allow these extremists to do what they do. Never mind the past history of Xinjiang with the Uyghurs, where they incited extremists. They were pumping in money, doing political diplomatic wrangling to prop up these organizations. The same thing that happened in Tibet. Bring it back to now. What's happening is that there's been an acceleration of shorting, basically dumping the U.S. Treasury bonds. It's increasing. It's happening in the Caribbean. It's happening in South America. But and it's also happening in India, in the Southeast Asia. But what the more pertinent matter is that allies, and Japan is an ally, and Japan has been selling their dollar reserves, their Treasury notes, U.S. Treasury notes, at an at a regular pace. Now it's accelerating. China has done the same, but China is not an ally. But now you have the Western European allies doing this. Germany, France, I think there's like 3 or 4 European countries that are doing this. Now, why is this significant? Because this ability of the United States to have deficit spending is based on the export of the U.S. dollar and making it as difficult as possible to do trade without the U.S. dollar. So, meaning the U.S. Has all the control, and the SWIFT system, which is controlled by the U.S. It's interbanking messaging system, basically saying, I owe you this, I owe you this to this, and I owe you that to that. So that's enables the trade, and so what's taking place is China and Russia and others are now getting interested in getting away from the SWIFT system, getting away from the U.S. Dollar, and concentrating on bilateral currency exchange, because the exposure to the U.S. dollar puts you in a position of where basically, think about it. It's basically one of those protection rackets from the mafia. You can think it's simple as that. We'll protect you, but we're going to be the cause of your hurt and anxiety and so on and so forth. And so that's exactly what's taking place. And even the allies are seeing. Even the so-called allies are seeing this, and they're going to get away and start putting warnings saying, hey, look, if you continue to do what you're doing, then, we're going to start de-dollarizing, and what happens? When that happens, all the money comes flooding back in. All that money that's been printed or digitally printed is coming back. And what happens is you're going to see the U.S. dollar reserve use going down from 59% at an accelerated rate. And then what's going to happen is, to buy an orange, whatever the current price is, you can quadruple it, or even pay 10 times or more for it, and that will be for everything. And the U.S. won't be able to pull in the uranium at almost free cost. But it also translates into other things for that, like the tech sector, other essential materials for the tech sector. But it also gets into weed. It gets into cocoa butter. It gets into coconut, bananas. You name it. Basically, the cost to bring it in, because the U.S. currency has massively inflated itself, so that the value is so high that basically the other countries that export things the U.S. uses will have a tiding connection, inflating the costs of production of goods, of commodities, basically everything. And so the U.S. will now have a massive glut of U.S. dollars, which are useless and almost useless, and overvalued, way overvalued, and we end up paying for it. Now, this isn't going to matter to well, it's going to matter, but it's not going to impact the 10% as much, although they're going to get hit harder than the 1% or the 0.1%. So, and that's another factor of why the middle class is disappearing, why China has more middle class citizens than all of the West put together. China has over $3 trillion worth in their sovereign wealth fund. Which means what they can use internally, as well as for export and import. China has a real industry. It's got a real industry that you can touch, feel, and taste, versus the financialized system, which is basically a reverse Robin Hood. It's a pillaging and plundering, both domestically and internationally. And the Europeans are finding out that they're not an exception to that pillaging and plundering. And of course, that those that who are in political and other and industrial power, it hurts them, but then they're not. At the same time, they're still capable of extracting wealth to themselves, enough to keep them afloat and comfortable. and but it will impact them. It will make them get be more critical because their wealth and value has decreased. Something that the United States and basically the Europeans have been doing for centuries, except now that another Western country is doing the exact same thing that they themselves thought was rightful for them to do, and so it's important to pay attention to these issues, because what you can do with an economy, especially when you have such control as being a reserve currency, has direct impact on basically everything, and that has U.S. is a monopoly. U.S. is a monopoly. Simply as put, they are robber barons. And when I say U.S., I'm not talking about the average American. I'm talking about the those that hold the wealth, which is generated from this extortionary mafia system. So, I was just at Tractor Supply store not too long ago. Pedigree dog food was the 44-pound Pedigree dog food, which previously was 50 pounds, and you could buy it for $21 or $21.99 or $22.99. Went up to 27 and dropped to 44 pounds. Now, I was just there at Tractor Supply store and bought the 44-pound pedigree, and with taxes it was over $43. Now, that's just and that's not one of these bourgeois boutique dog so-called dog food, right? So, and this is all within a couple of months, or 6 months. So expect to see increases, which we've already seen. But that's a massive jump from 27 to over 43. Understand, this is it's we're going to see, and that is because of the U.S. and the West destabilizing the energy, the global energy transactions, the indirect effects of starting the so-called proxy war in Ukraine. It's not a proxy war; it's a direct war, because if you, by UN international law, if you are selling weapons, setting up logistics, if you are giving information to one side, you're co-belligerent and you are directly involved. And that is what the U.S. is doing. And that is exactly what they're trying. Not trying, but they're doing to China. I just haven't gone to a physical war on actual Chinese territory, using military. And even though the U.S. has doubled military personnel on the Chinese territory of Taiwan, which the U.S. Acknowledges is a Chinese territory of Taiwan is the Chinese territory of China, mainland China. And they've been selling weapons for decades, and that's being ramped up. Selling more weapons, as well as doing the propaganda PR, just like they did in Ukraine. So, what does all that mean? It means they're bleeding. They're bleeding the financial and monetary resources from the vast majority of Americans, and they're going into the pockets of who? It's the corporate mafia. It's the political mafia, who's bleeding it away from you, doing basically 24-hour, 365 days a year of daylight robbery. And the media is the one making the excuses for them, giving you the lies, getting you upset and angry with China, with Russia, with Venezuela, with Iran, Syria, Libya, Ethiopia. Is it Ethiopia? I think it's Ethiopia. Basically, whoever they start to do a media drive or a political drive to demonize, the Australians, Australian political mafia and business mafia are all in. Australia, basically the U.S. military is already in Australia. It's basically Australia has no control over their military, and if you look into it, you'll find out. Basically, it may not be in their Australian constitution, but basically, in South Korea, and this is to explain what I'm talking about with Australia. In South Korea, basically in the South Korean constitution, it basically says that the U.S. military, in a time of war, has explicit control of the South Korean military. Now, that is not something that's in the Australian, but de facto they have with this AUKUS nonsense, and with and basically the control of information, as well as military information and intelligence sites in Australia, and everything else. They basically have de facto control of Australian military. So Australia is not a sovereign state. They don't have any political or military control. The media is owned by the corporate mafia, and they're the ones lying. And ex-PM Paul Keating of Australia was on the National Press Club of Australia, and go watch that. At least Paul has some basis in reality. Then there's John Landers, an ex foreign diplomat for Australia, who was primarily for China. He was relations with China. So these are the other things that people should be paying attention to. The people they should be listening to, because they're based in reality, in actual reality. They're not out there demonizing. They're the ones talking about the reality, saying, look, we're putting ourselves in a position of financial, monetary, and as well as military military harm by calling out enemies that don't exist, and doing the rah-rah cheering for hostile aggression against nations, other countries that have no hostility towards them. And that's what the United States and the West has always done. You know, you can call it scapegoating, you can call it whatever, but that's what they're doing. And we as people in the West, we should be getting ourselves aware of this, and we should be forcefully seeing to it that we instill a fear into these criminal organizations, these mafias, and saying, cut your shit out, get the fuck out, otherwise we're going to be the ones coming to you and stringing your asses up. But that's not what we're doing. We're going along, and we're bitching about it, and talking about it. And meanwhile, people like me who speak to this, we don't get the coverage, we don't get the exposure that we should, so that we can make our fellow people self-aware about the situation, so that they can have the rightful context, rightful history, and everything else of what's taking place. History isn't just about what happened a century ago or a thousand years ago. History is made every day, every minute, every second, every minute, every hour, every day, every week, month, and year. So it does matter. It matters what we do, and we have to do that. And if we don't, we can be divided, we can be conquered, we can be held in metaphorical chains, and be victims to the will and determination of those who are looking to enrich themselves and consolidate the power for themselves. That's basically what it is, and you can look at it as take away all the other stuff, and you can look at it as feudalism. It's neo-feudalism. It's a resurgence of feudalism. You have all them, basically acting like feudal aristocracy, feudal lords, ladies, and monarchs, as they just don't use the words. Your big corporations act like feudal realms, small feudal realms, and that's the point. They're trying to create this neo-feudalism everywhere, because they want control of everything. They want all the power, all the wealth, all the resources, all the things that can enrich them personally, and the hell with the rest, and hell with even the world, which the planet which we need, the living planet which we need to exist. And so it's important to understand these things. It's important to get the context. It's important to know history. It's important to put the effort in, because otherwise you lose all motivation, all impetus to fight back and preserve preserve the instinct, to preserve your survival instinct. No, survival isn't about immediately being put in a position of where you're going to lose your life, your physical life. Survival has to do with a lot of things in your life. If you can't make them enough money to support just the basics, right? And you have to go into debt in order to bring in, and that debt just compounds and compounds and compounds. That's not survival, and it ultimately hurts you, and there's less and less that you can do to provide your basic needs. When the ultra rich own the lands, own the means of production, own almost everything, and they keep broadening it, then that impacts your survival. When they can dump toxins and pollutions at will, willy-nilly, and there's no consequence, that's impacts you directly on your survival. And which is why collectivism or socialism is paramount, because collectivism and socialism means that we have to invest to become self-aware, so that we can have a community where we can collectively understand, and then we're talking to each other, and we can point out, oh, this is the cause of the harm, and these are the positions we need to take, and these are the ones we need to go after, and we need to repress and suppress them, so that we collectively float up and preserve, because then we're not hostages to the fluctuations of what we can buy, what we can do to have stability and security in our lives. Again, so it's very important. You simply cannot ignore it, and we must be able to talk about it. We must be able to inform each other, because that's what a collective does. That's what a community does. That's what a country is. It's not a country if you don't have any choices, when you must be under the suppression and repression of those who control. And, you can talk democracy, liberty, and all that other stuff, but it's absolutely meaningless, absolutely and utterly meaningless, if you don't have the control. And electing criminal assholes who want to become part of the mafia every 4 years is not a democracy. When they can appoint others who will control the levers and hand it over to them, that's not a democracy. That's not a democracy. People need to have a more than superficial, illusionary, mythological understanding of democracy. And the only way to do that is to become self-aware and understand that it is us all collectively which make the country. Understand that we are the backbone, foundation, and an engine, collectively. It can't be just one ethno group against another, and another ethno group against another, or Democrat the Democrat team against the Republican team, or independent, or the libertarians, or the right wing, or the nationalists, or pop. It's got to be a collective. That's all divide and conquer, and that's artificial. It's something that's comes down historically, which we call tradition and culture. It's been instilled in you, and we have to break those chains. We have to break those chains. The only way you can do that is to get informed, is to put energy and effort into understanding. And the only way we can do that is to speak about it, talk about it, and come up with solutions and ideas. Be proactive. You know, I talk about proactive things we can do. You know, right now, one of the things that we can do is to create alternative centers of power to bleed away the power and control of these mafias, of these new neo-feudal feudal aristocracy. But we can't do that if we're not informed, if we're not aware. We're not self-aware. We're not self-aware if we only parrot. Well, if we can't break the mental blockades, when our reaction is based on instinctual, emotional tantrums, which has been installed in us. Instilled in us. All right, I'll end it there.